Welcome, guys. We have new faces and we have old faces, which that makes me really happy. Welcome to another Startup Grind event. For those who don't know what Startup Grind is, it's a global community. We have reached to 250 cities currently and 100 countries. What we do is we do events like these where we invite high-profile people that have managed to bring an impact to the local community through their actions, and that can be entrepreneurial or just giving back to the community through some kind of a type. Today we have a guest. I don't think there's need of any other explanations or descriptions of Vladimir Oane. We already did it on the event. So what I can say about Vladimir is that he is the Chief Product Officer at Hootsuite.
I'm one of the product managers. We don't have that role, but
yep. So thanks for correcting that. What we will do today is that we will talk and have a deep dive discussion about his journey until now, about Ubervu and how he got how he managed together with his team to make a successful exit to Hootsuite. So please give a big welcome with a round of applause for Vladimir.
Hello. Good to be here.
Vladimir, thank you very much for accepting the invitation. I know
Thank you for inviting me.
We had a couple of back and forth discussions.
Mm-hmm.
My first question would be, I'm gonna go way back,
mm-hmm.
and ask you how were you as a kid? What were your passions? What did you like to do? As we boys usually have this thing about cars and making them, destroy them and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I wasn't into cars, and I'm not into cars now. I mean, fun fact: I don't have a driving license and I don't drive. So yeah, cars were never a passion of mine. I like to break things and to put them back together, I guess. But there was nothing special about cars. I don't know. As far as I can remember my childhood, I was into reading and finding stuff. I had the privilege to be born in a family where books were everywhere. I mean, like my dad is a history teacher, and I mean, I had books even in the kitchen. So there was always something. Yeah, there was a library everywhere. Yeah, so there was always something to read. And yeah, I kind of devoured everything that I could get my hands on. Of course, my dad would help me pick the right book. So I don't know, if I were in the second grade, he would tell me to read the Three Musketeers, or I don't know, something from Jules Verne or something. By the way, I think I read all the Jules Verne books when I was young. So yeah, that's kind of what I did. And there weren't a lot of computers when I was young. I mean, I think I got my first access to my first computer when I was in my 4th grade, and yeah, that was amazing. The idea that you could, press a few keys and then the computer would do what you tell him. That was mind blowing. Yeah, so I got fascinated by computers since then, and kind of educated myself, because there were, probably it's hard for you to remember, but in the 90s, there was, in my hometown, I'm from Vlča, there was just one computer shop, and it's probably a quarter of this room where there was a bunch of boxes with a few towers, and there were no magazines, there was no internet. So yeah, I kind of had to get my hands on some old books and I don't know, get some friends who are also passionate about the topic. So that's kind of how we got into computers. So yeah, I don't know if I answer your question. If you want to deep dive into,
I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of things that you did as a teenager.
Yeah, as a teenager, I had a bunch of different hobbies. I mean, like so I don't know. I was in Olympics in history because of the stuff that I had access to. My dad, yeah. But I participated in all the contests and won the majority of them. But I kind of had a superpower as I had access to all these books and systems. Exactly. I was also participating in math and in computer competitions and doing well in some of them. I got fascinated by the internet like in late 90s, and I was doing a bunch of small projects. I had a techno band. I was a computer.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I still have my old songs. So I was into like trance, if you will.
Yeah.
And like that was big in the 90s, like late 90s, early 2000s. That was the thing. I mean, like so very, very aggressive. I mean, I can barely listen to my old songs because they were like, I don't know, 140, 150 beats per minute. And now I'm more chilled. I mean, I listen to chill out music and hip hop and stuff. So I know when I listen to my old music, it's, why were you so angry? Why was I so angry? So yeah, I was kind of juggling with different things, and I guess going to university was kind of the decision moment, and I decided to go to study computer science in Bucharest. That was a major disappointment, but kind of led to where I am now. So it was a 50-50.
Yeah. Do you consider yourself a troublemaker as a teenager or as a kid?
Not really, no, but I'm a contrarian, I would say. I like taking the opposite or the least popular argument just for fun. So I would be the kind of guy in class who would always ask the difficult questions, not necessarily because I was terribly interested, because I wanted to make a thing. So I was like, I don't know, the religion teachers hated me, probably. And that could be said for a bunch of other teachers, because I was gonna ask, I was gonna all the silly questions, very non-sophisticated questions. But our teachers were super stupid, so you could, ask them things like, who did Cain had sex with in the Bible? Like, it's not clear to me. Can you please explain that? Or can we talk about virgin birth? And that usually created some issues, let's just say. But I like that. And moving beyond religion, I like to look at the other side of the argument, and sometimes if the majority goes with one point of view, I kind of by instinct go with the opposite. I don't know. I like to be in the 1%, and if all of you like X, I'm kind of gonna go with Y just because I don't know it's different, and I like a debate, and maybe we can fight, like intellectual fight, of course, and that's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're all the same and think the same, I think that's pretty boring. So.
I agree. I think it's a description of this personality of entrepreneur and the black sheep, being the black sheep, always doing other things and exploring, guided by curiosity and going into creating and creativity. So so you said that you went to study computer science to Bucharest.
Mm-hmm.
What did you end up doing after that? Like, did you land a job?
Not really, no. My expectations about the computer science university is that I would be taught how to write a computer program. But when I thought about like a program or software, I didn't think about like an algorithm. Like, who gives a shit about an algorithm? I mean, like, no, I wanted something that I can box, that I can give it to someone and see that he's using it and doing something with it. And they didn't teach any of that. I mean, like, the first 2 years were like complex physics and math, and then very complex algorithms with dubious applicability. I'm sure that they were amazing, but I couldn't fill the gap between amazing algorithm and a product that would do anything for the world or for anyone. So for me, that gap, as with discussions with my religion teachers, no one was even interested in addressing those questions, like what's the use of this algorithm? Like, who cares? It's an algorithm. You have to learn it, and so you pass. So I thought that was stupid. So a story that I tell is that I had no idea what an entrepreneur is when I went to college. I had no idea that. I mean, I knew about people that started companies, but I had no idea that that's actually a thing that you could do. People that know me from high school say that I was telling everyone that my dream after college would be to be a Microsoft engineer, because I thought, like, Microsoft, that was the thing in early 2000s. I mean, like, you had Windows and like that Word, and like they were the 90% of what you saw on every computer. So I don't know, the idea that I could have an impact into that sort of company by writing software, that was, I don't know, meaningful to me. And then by accident, I guess, but one of the first speakers that came to university to speak was a guy named Radu Georgescu. I don't know if you know him, he's quite famous, but it happened that when I went to university, or around that period, he sold a company to Microsoft. He sold GCAD, which is an antivirus company, which is now Windows Defender, I guess. So he came to speak at our university, and told a bunch of stories on. I only remember the stories about how him and Bill Gates were hanging out and planned how to rule the world type of thing. But it was very eye-opening to me. I mean, like, here I am thinking that the highest thing that I could do in my career was to be an engineer for Microsoft, and here comes this guy who is hanging out with Bill Gates, and he sold a company to Microsoft. Like, holy shit, can you do that? Like, who do I need to ask for approval for that sort of thing? And nobody. That was the amazing thing. You didn't have to ask for approval. You can just do and build something. So that was kind of the glimpse that I got to look into this idea of starting your own company. And I started to get myself educated at first with the books that I got access to, which were very like bad books, like Robert Kiyosaki and all the bullshit on the self-help entrepreneurial literature. But then I got to study the history of the Silicon Valley, and got to speak to some people who did companies. So by the time that I got to my, I would say, second, third year, I kind of knew how this entrepreneurship thing is about, what it is about. So that's kind of like the difference between my expectations for college and what I actually got in return. And from the second year, once I made a decision that it's a better use of my time to try all sorts of stupid ideas, I would say college was priority number 10. But I managed to finish it. I have a diploma. I don't value it too much. I lost it once. Let me tell you, if you lost your diploma, it's very hard to get it back, and you have to go and talk to 10 people and pay a bunch of stupid taxes and fill a bunch of forms, and it takes a month to get it back. I only needed it because I'm now employed for probably the first time in my life after my company was acquired, and I had to present my diploma for some procedure laws and stuff like that. And yeah, getting that useless piece of paper was quite a challenge.
Awesome. I'm gonna slowly move to make a connection with Ubervu. So, what happened between that glimpse that you got from Radu and starting the company? Like, how did you meet your co-founders?
Yeah.
The entire dynamics of that.
Yeah, I mean, like Uberview was not my first startup. Thank God for that. No, I had a bunch of silly ideas or good ideas that were executed poorly. So I tried a bunch of things. From the second year of college until I started Uberview, I worked on a bunch of stuff, mainly with the same people that I kind of co-founded Uberview with. The two guys that I mainly work with are Dragos and Dan. I know Dan since the first year of school. I mean, we were colleagues back in my first grade. We weren't like best buddies or something, but we ended up at the same universities, and we found a connection by our passion for computers and internet, and we become very good friends. So we started a lot of companies together, and then we met Dragos, who was not part of our circle, but he was probably the only other guy from our circle who was at least interested in technology beyond like coding, and he was interested on the business side more than, I don't know, the technology side. So we kind of found common ground there. Our first entrepreneurial idea was a very naive one, but we have friends who couldn't get how do you call it, like scholarships. There were like all these exchange programs, and you could get scholarships in other places from the Romanian universities, and the people who were trying to get those positions and had problems with their applications. Either they found out too late for a deadline, or a lot of the positions were not even advertised. So we looked at that and said, hey, I mean, like, we have a bunch of friends who wanted to go and study abroad, and there seems to be some sort of a lack of transparency and a lack of process for this type of thing. So let's make a website and a product to address this. That was like early 2000s. So we built a quite complex product to manage this workflow, where we were collecting all the positions that were being advertised. We were distributing them to all the universities who had accounts, and then you could, as a college student, you could apply to some of these. Everything was like, for software built in early 2000s, I mean, like, wow, we packed a lot of cool stuff in that product. But of course, I missed the solution, missed the problem completely. I mean, like, that was not the problem. The problem was corruption. I mean, like, those positions were not advertised, not by mistake, but by design. So actually, we built this shiny castle of functionality, and then we had some early successes with institutions like the British Council or the French Institute, and those guys were like, oh, it is amazing that you guys exist, and let me help you out. But then of course they were like 5%. We had to actually get involved with the universities, and that's where kind of the whole thing, we realized that we were so naive and innocent that that's not exactly what's happening. I mean, like, those positions were advertised an hour before deadline by purpose. So the idea that I'm going to promote this and was outrageous for a lot of people. Were kind of insulted that we decided to work on this without their permission. I mean, like, I remember we were so naive that we didn't get the message when people were speaking to us in like their coded whatever politician speak. So we ended up even talking to the Minister of Education at that time to discuss Like, hey, we're doing something and we don't ask for money. We didn't want money. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, like, we were giving this for free. We just wanted to help some of our colleagues with this. And we're like, why not adopt it? Yeah, and yeah, that didn't go anywhere. But what we discovered is that, man, we can really build something that is world class. And we were very proud of that software, and that slowly transitioned into us getting requests from people to build all sorts of things. So it's probably not news, but I mean, the team slowly transformed into a services gig, where we started to build all sorts of things for different companies, local, international, and we played with a bunch of other ideas. We build a CMS. We build, and by the way, that CMS won a few design awards in 2006. I mean, like, we were, Yahoo was giving those web, Yahoo, I know. Like, in 2006, Yahoo was a big deal. And they were giving, like, these design awards, like, I don't know, every year or something. And our CMS was I think, number 2 in the world based on their, I don't know, ranking. That was before WordPress, or WordPress was not a thing back then. And everyone was doing CMSs. I'm not going to say that was a smart business decision, but it was influenced a lot by the things that we were doing at the company. We built a magazine focused on movie reviews. We toyed with a project that would analyze all the music that you played through Winamp. Again, that was a thing back then, and connect you with people with similar music tastes. And that was super early. There were companies that did that after we kind of decided not to pursue it. So yeah, I mean, we had all these things while we were making money from our services company. So yeah, I mean, I tried I was involved in a bunch of other, let's just say, initiatives. I was part of the group that founded the first affiliate network in Romania and kind of Southeastern Europe, I guess. So To Performant, if you know about it, I was part of that. Not much beyond picking the stupid initial name and kind of coming up with idea, but yeah, I was part of that a little bit. I also worked on some tourism related internet companies. Probably I did a bunch of other stuff, but these are the ones that come to mind. And yeah, I mean, like, the idea of Uberview didn't come up like, hey, we have an idea. It was developing out of our struggle to come up with version 2 of our CMS, which was called Bluo. So we wanted to do Bluo 2.0, and we had this idea. Like, I had this epiphany, I would say, and I kind of convinced my co-founders that I'm not crazy. But my epiphany in 2007, 2008 was that content is distributed, and the idea of having a very centralized place where your content is collected to is old school, and I was a big believer in distributed and very focused type of content. And I don't know, back then I saw WordPress, Twitter was getting started, and that kind of gave me the confidence that there is something there. Facebook was still closed for universities, but it opened very, very soon after we kind of started working on it. There was Dig was huge, Reddit, there were a bunch of these, MySpace, Web 2.0, let's say, content distribution mechanisms. YouTube was a thing. It wasn't the big company that it is today, but you could watch videos online. So yeah, the idea was let's create a content management system where the content that you create is not actually stored on a server somewhere that you rent or that you host in the basement, but it's actually distributed across all these platforms. So that was the idea, and we kind of hacked something together, and then someone told us that there are these tech conferences that you can go and talk to people. And I was like, oh shit, that's a good idea. So you can go and meet people, and yeah, one of the closest one to us was Next Web in Amsterdam. I think it was the first or the second edition, but we went there and we applied. We got accepted immediately. Probably there weren't a lot of people that applied back then. So yeah, we went there. We pitched on a stage and all that. But the most interesting thing out of that conference, apart from meeting and connecting with other like-minded crazy entrepreneurs, is that we met Robert Scoble. Yeah. Robert Scoble was big. I mean, like, he was the social media guy back in 2007. He wrote the book on social media. His was probably the only one back then, and he was the face for Microsoft. So he did a lot of work for Microsoft, a lot of video, and one of the discussions that I had with him was around our assumptions, and he challenged us on our assumption that the problem is distribution of the content. He said that based on his experience, the main issue, which I think is still an issue today, although not as big as in 2008, is the creation of content. So he kind of told us how big of a crew he had to create all that content and how much money Microsoft is spending, and the idea that creating content for the web is not trivial. So he said that, I mean, like, this product that you're doing, even if it will work extremely well, you will get a handful of customers because not that many people can use it because they don't have content to put. And ours was I mean, we were focused on media, we were focused on not on just text. That was the whole idea. Pictures, put pictures on Flickr and put the video on YouTube and I don't know, Vimeo or stuff like that. That was the whole idea. But one thing that he said is that there are a lot of small creators, and the only way to get traffic these days is to get your content distributed across everywhere. So maybe you should track what's happening with this content after it is created. So yeah, I mean, we stripped down, because that was also some functionality that we had in mind. So we stripped down the publishing side and we focused on the monitoring side, let's say, of all the comments that are happening on Dig and Reddit and blogs and stuff like that. And that was kind of the kernel of Uberview. And we didn't have a company; it was just a prototype that we were working on from time to time. But with this idea, we pitched it to Seedcamp, and Seedcamp was, again, like second edition or something. It was the only incubator or accelerator in Europe at that time. So now there are 5 in every city. So yeah, we got accepted and we incorporated and we started to become a real company working on this product for real. And we sold our agency a few months before applying, so we were crazy enough, but also I guess we had the wisdom to burn our bridges when we decided to do Uberview. After trying to, I don't know, focus on both for a while, we decided to get out of the services business, and we don't have a backup. So, I mean, we were, I don't know, 3 months away from personal insolvency before Seedcamp.
Was it a good decision to burn your bridges and your agency?
Looking now, yes, but I wouldn't give that advice to any of you. I mean, like, I think all in all, it's quite stupid not to have a plan B. I mean, maybe it got us focused, and I'm here to tell you how amazing everything turned out. But I don't know, like, it was kind of stupid. Yeah, it was good. It worked out, but it could have Well,
you went all in, on the Uberview.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess it worked out for me. I don't know if you want to apply the same technique. It worked in history many times. I mean, there were.
Can you run us through some of the key points of the Uberview growth, and how key differentiators that made a really big impact in terms of the growth? Because I've in my research about you and about your work is that you drove the growth and the international expansion. Things like you felt that whoa, that thing which we did was amazing and had an amazing result on the growth. So just
Well, yeah, I don't think I did that much better. I mean, like it was. Yeah, it's better than the companies from the region, but I think I could have done way better. I mean, like hopefully my next gig would be better than Uberview. So one thing that we did, and this was fundamental, and I think this is something that you could apply in your own startups. I didn't focus on Romania at all. I didn't focus on Romania to the point where, although I was Romanian and we had some employees working from Romania, our core target were international users, most specifically US, and we tried to replicate whatever we were learning from books and talking to other people, but really be an international startup. And I could not explain it at the time, but I thought that the path that all the companies that I don't know were trying things from Romania were kind of on this idea of I'm going to start something small, tested it out in Romania or Bucharest, and if it works out, I'm going to expand it to other regions, maybe, I don't know, countries nearby, and 3 years I'm going to open something in the US. And yeah, having some business experience, I knew kind of what the most likelihood result of that plan would be. And what I saw was that companies who said that they got so drowned by their peers and by the Romanian scene, and I didn't know anyone who actually did that international expansion. And all of the companies who were kind of local but with dreams of getting outside of Romania were, I don't know, spending their energy in petty battles and discussing all sorts of what I consider at the time to be like nonsense and like things that don't make a lot of sense in the grand scheme of things. So maybe I mean, like we were super arrogant, and a lot of people made fun of us. These guys who are doing the international startup, yeah, good luck, yeah. So, which probably motivated us even harder to prove them wrong. But yeah, I mean, like we did something that none of the other companies in our circle did, and even today, like I don't know, like 8-9 years later, I still think that I don't buy the story that we're gonna try something local, and if it works out, we're gonna become an international player. I think most likely scenario is that you'll become a local player because the Romanian realities are so different than, I don't know, US, let's say, because when we say international, we mean US. I mean, like I don't think there's anyone here who wants to, I don't know, go to China. And if you do, I mean, that would be probably a pretty good plan. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like, that's where the money is nowadays. But yeah, when we talk about international, we mean US because of, I don't know, culture, I don't know, affinity and things like that. So yeah, I mean, like there are a bunch of things that we did. We raised money from the US, from London. We incorporated as a London-based companies. We raised VC money from outside the country. So we did all these things that were a little bit, I don't know, crazy, I would say, but they all stem from this idea that we should not care about the Romanian market. And I was right. I mean, like, I think the market for Uberview was, in Romania, was 3-4 clients or something. I think that's the maximum number of people that from Romania that became our clients anyway. So that there was absolutely no way for us to become a real company with the Romanian market.
Did you got any, like, in terms of all these decisions, raising money from London, going internationally, was this like a gut feeling, intuition based decision, or did you have advisors? Did you reached out to people, hey, what should we do? We are thinking of doing this and this.
Yeah, I mean, we got advisor along the way, but yeah, I mean, like I think these early decisions were just based on intuition, and I used to ditch intuition as something that is like not rational or something. The older I get, I like intuition more and more. I think if your gut tells you to do something, there's probably a reason in your subconscious for that itch. So yeah, we followed that itch many times, and it turns out to be the right decision. Although I didn't have a clear justification for doing it at the time, and even now I don't know if what I'm telling you is the right reason or just a narrative that I constructed to justify what I did back then. I don't know. We can philosophize that for days, but where I stand now, that's why I think we made those decisions and they work pretty well for us. So yeah, take whatever you want from our experience.
What you said right now somehow goes with my next question, is that do you think that what you have done in terms of decisions and steps, those things apply today, but also combine it with what you have met and during our days, like the conferences and the mentorship that you're doing already. Mm-hmm. Does those things apply still today, or did they switch, move to another direction?
Yeah, I do think they apply, and I mean we're in such a much better position than we were as a country, as a community, than when I started. I mean, like when I started, there was no tech conference in Romania, and now there are a few just in the city, and there was no the idea that someone in Romania would give you money for your company. It wasn't. It's hard now. I get it, and it's not perfect, and compared to the U.S. sucks. But that was not even an option. And the other American thing that you're gonna raise money from family and friends. I mean, like maybe in the U.S., but in Romania, my family is poor. They can barely sustain themselves, let alone give me money to start my company. And I mean, like my dad still thinks that entrepreneurship is a dirty word, and I should stop calling myself an entrepreneur because I know it's kind of shady being an entrepreneur. So that's kind of what our culture is, but it's getting way better, and a lot of companies are kind of doing some of the things that we did with various degrees of success. And I think in a lot of cases, one of my greatest satisfaction, and I'm sure my co-founder's satisfaction as well, is that we were the first company to prove this path. I mean, yeah, a lot of people made fun of us in the beginning, but we were the first company who raised money for a SaaS company. We proved that a Romanian team can go to an incubator, and we told people what an incubator is, first of all. Then raising money, then, I don't know, opening a US office and hiring an American CEO, and I don't know, all these things until an acquisition. That was, I think, the message that we sent to the community was more important than, I don't know, the value that we created through our software. Because I see a lot of, like, a few years later, like Emmy, a friend of mine, did kind of the same thing with his video startup with Brainient. And now if you go to all these hubs, even this hub or the Bucharest hub, and there are so many startups who are doing crazy innovative things for the international market, and they have that arrogance to say no to, I don't know, tradition and friends and family, and to give it a shot. And yeah, some of them will fail, but maybe some will succeed. And I'm already seeing some companies who are getting some traction. That traction creates some investment opportunities. So it's all like I would like to think that we operate in this like snowball effect, and we were kind of the first particles that started this. So in a way that gives me great satisfaction, but also hope for what we can do from now on.
Awesome. I do agree. I do agree with you that somehow things are changing and you get to see more and more qualitative startups and getting traction.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit to fundraising, if you could share your take with us on capital infusion in Eastern Europe and maybe Romania. What do you think about it now? Although you mentioned here and there about some things about it, what do you think about it now? And where is it going? What's next? Your intuition, gut feeling, and
I'm not an expert in the funding market. Let's say I have some friends who are VCs, and so I don't have any informed opinions. I think, I don't know, clearly there are a lot of gaps in the funding, let's just say, ecosystem. We are getting some money for early stage, like seed. Nowadays, I think if you want to raise between, I don't know, 10K and 100K, that is becoming really easy. Even with a mediocre idea and a mediocre team, you can probably get that money. It's between that amount and, I don't know, $1 million, where you don't find, I think, a lot of options. And again, follow up for I don't know, a B round, C round, D round, for God's sake, those are not options in the country yet. So yeah, I mean, clearly the system is quite dysfunctional, but you could say that by comparing it to the, I don't know, the Silicon Valley ecosystem, which I think it would be unfair. I compare it to how it was in 2008, and there was nothing. I mean, from that point of view, that's a huge improvement. And you have hubs and incubators and all sorts of programs to give you money to build something. So from that point of view, great progress. One thing that kind of worries me is that a lot of it is, and this is more of a political discussion, and I don't want to get involved in politics, but a lot of the growth here is fueled by public money, and I don't think that's healthy. I don't think the government investing in entrepreneurship is something that is healthy for anyone. I think governments should stay out of business as much as possible, and the cash infusion that it's happening nowadays to all these European funds and government are not done based on sound, I know, investment methodology. They're based on, I don't know, I don't think a bureaucrat can make an investment decision analyzing a startup, and I don't also think that's not fair for the taxpayers to fund startups. These are the riskiest things that could be in business. The likelihood of a startup succeeding is, I don't know, 1 in 100. Why would you put government money into startups? That doesn't make any sense, and it creates an imbalance that I think creates the wrong incentives for the private people to put money and to create the ecosystem that we want to get. Creates inflation and all sorts of problems. So I would like to see an ecosystem that is growing probably slower, but on a better foundation, where, I don't know, the money comes from the people who had successful exits, or some private institutions who want to align themselves with innovation, or and that also grows with, I don't know, advancements in, I don't know, legal firms. I mean, for God's sake, we have a couple of companies who know what IP is, and the legal profession is not where it needs to be, and that's bad. I mean, we don't have marketing people, we don't have salespeople, we have so many gaps, and the worst thing that you could do in an ecosystem that is lacking all these skills is throw money at the problem. I think that makes the problem worse. So yeah, these are some pluses and minuses. Hopefully we'll find a way forward. And I think I'm quite confident that, I know, we Romanians suck in a lot of ways, culturally, I think, and historically, but we have this way of finding our way around. I mean, I don't know how to, I don't even think there's a word in English, maybe I don't know. We have a special type of hustling that is not the American hustling. And I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I mean, like, we hustle, but the Americans that I work with that were big hustlers, and I say that in the most positive way possible, they hustle by respecting the rules. I know, I mean, like, we don't care so much about the rules, let's say. It's very hard to put it in words. Maybe after a few drinks, I'll make myself more clear.
Yeah. Just to keep it in the fundraising part, and just a really quick question: how was it for you when you raised your seed money and then raising from London? Was the process difficult? Like, did they constrain the team, the startup? Like, were you supposed to?
It was super hard, but I had no idea how hard it actually was because I was stupid. So I was so stupid that I had no idea what sort of time I live in. So to give you a sense of the situation, after we won Seedcamp, and we were in the center of investment in Europe. That's where kind of all the VCs were, and a lot of American companies had offices there. So we thought that, and we were on the limelight. Everyone wanted to talk to us. So we thought, holy shit! Everyone wanted to talk to us. We had more meetings than time. But in 2008, we won Seedcamp 2 days after the financial crash. So I remember when I rented my first place in my apartment in London, and I could see the Lehman Brothers building. And the first day that I moved, there were some people who were taking off the signs from the building. And I was like, oh, so weird. They're taking off signs. I had no idea that the world is crashing around me. So I just went ahead. And it was later that I found how tumultuous this moment was in the financing world. VCs were in a lot of trouble. There were a lot of internal struggles. A lot of them had no money left to invest in their own portfolio, let alone bet on some crazy Eastern European companies. So looking back, man, that was super hard, but I had no idea about it because I was so stupid and so arrogant that I just went ahead and met all the VCs and pitched my ideas. And I don't even remember me asking something about, hey, how is this financial crisis going? You guys affected in any way? How are things going? No, that was not something. But yeah, probably because I don't know, incubators were new, and we were among the 5 companies that got all these exposure. We managed to raise some money from some great investors, and I have so much appreciation for everything that they did for us. But yeah, it was quite unusual, and I think we were lucky. I think it's hard to repeat that experience.
Awesome. I'm gonna switch it a little bit, and I'm gonna ask you when you remove the word entrepreneur, business, work, what's the raw foundational ingredient that somehow you consider that you have to have, and you had to keep the hustle going on, and Yeah,
I try to stay
maybe as a personality trait, or
Mm-hmm. No, I try to stay away from giving advice, but I don't know, looking at some of my friends who are also entrepreneur, there are probably some patterns that I could come up with. Again, not saying that if you don't have these traits, you cannot succeed. On the contrary, but I think curiosity is important. Just to be extremely curious about how things work and to ask questions like you're a broken record. And that's one of my traits. I mean, like, if I don't understand it, I will ask why. Like I'm a 2-year-old. So yeah, that's one. And I don't know, like resistance to pain probably is the other one, because it's not. I mean, it's not easy. It's actually one of the hardest things that you can do. And when people talk about like the roller coaster that people have, the ups and downs, and where I don't know, you get a new client and you're so happy and you think you're on the top of the world, and then, I don't know, a top employee decides to leave the company and join, I don't know, like a Facebook or something, and then you're depressed and you think everything will go down. And why I say you need to have resistance to pain is that, as you probably know, when people describe the roller coaster, they are thinking like, yeah, you have an event this month and an event 3 months from now. And no, that's probably like in an hour. And you kind of have to do that. And usually the bad news are so much numerous than the good news. And you kind of have to find a way out. And there are so many problems, and you probably have so few, answers and solutions. So, yeah, you have to be a little sadomasochistic, I would say.
Cool, awesome, thank you. To somehow close the journey that we had in our discussion with Ubervu and funding and so, how was the feeling when Hootsuite came and said, we want to buy your product or your company? How did that felt? How was it like process?
Well, it's not as climatic as the movies would have you believe. It's on the contrary. And like the night when I signed the papers, I was in hospital for a few hours doing transfusions, and that was because I had some bad health issues that kind of surfaced because of all the stress. But yeah, I mean, like, first of all, an acquisition is not like a one-off event. It's something that happens over many, many months, and where you are discussing with multiple partners to see if there's a fit, and you're negotiating, and there are a bunch of parties involved. I mean, you cannot pinpoint and they called, and then you said yes, and then the next thing, champagne came over, and I mean, like, that's in the movies. No, I mean, like, any transaction that involves mergers or acquisitions and stuff like that are very, very hard and consuming. And I mean, probably a month before signing the final papers, I barely slept. That was because, I mean, we had 3 offices. Hootsuite had also a bunch of offices. It was a complicated transaction, a lot of people involved, IP spread across 2 continents. It was messy. I in all honesty, I don't want to do it again. I mean, hopefully I'll manage to do it better. But it was not a pleasant thing. And you have to also manage the expectations of a lot of people, employees, investors, advisors, who had different ideas on what you should do, and also different personal expectations, whether that's financial or like what they want to do with their careers. And your decision destroyed some people's dreams, and you have to manage that, which is quite an emotional roller coaster as well. So I wouldn't describe it as a very joyful experience. On the contrary, of course, it's life-changing, and you now come to see me here giving you advice, which, yeah, I think it's positive. But don't do it for the thrill that you get from the movies, because I don't think that exists. And again, this speaks on the successful acquisitions, but most acquisitions that you read in TechCrunch are not successful at all. I mean, like, if you think that all those startups that are being acquired are all of a sudden millionaires and stuff like that, that's not usually how it goes. A lot of these companies are being bought, not being sold. So when you're being bought and when you have to sell yourself, it's not on your terms. And a lot of people have to work a lot for that equity, and even investors lose money on a lot of these deals. So you have to look a little bit deeper on these acquisitions. And I hate giving advice, but one of the things that I'm a big believer in is that you shouldn't aim for an acquisition. I mean, if I never try to create something in order for it to be acquired. And I know entrepreneurs who are doing that very, very successfully, but I think that's kind of aiming for your second best option. That's why, I mean, like, when people ask me, like, was it a success that Hootsuite acquired your company? Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, probably it's better than failing, but the bigger success would have been for us to buy Hootsuite. I mean, I know, and that's, like, a lot of people say, how arrogant of you. Like, why is that arrogant? I mean, like, yeah, I know, like, they were a bigger company and they were more successful than us, and I mean, it made sense, but that speaks more to how good the founding team and Ryan's talent to create a company better than I could. And that's, I mean, like, I have a great deal of admiration for his work, but I don't know, I want to get better myself. So I don't think it was a huge success. It was, yeah, okay, I mean, for Romania it was, but I think it would have been better if we bought it.
So this comes to my final last two questions. So if you could share your best book that you've read and also recommend to the people here and also to the internet nation.
Tough one.
That could spark something like, like, yeah, that's simple.
Inspirational book? Yeah. I don't know, nothing comes to mind. I mean, I have a lot of, like, technical books, and inspirational books are good, but after you get deeper into the subject, you realize they're a little bit shallow, and also that they kind of misrepresented the facts a little bit.
Something that can lead you, like, into more deep dive discussion or thinking, like, we had the discussion, like, in the garden right now, that gives you that effect of expanding your mind.
Yeah, I mean, like, I could come up with a bunch of titles that would be quite boring to read if you're not in the current mindset. One that is quite accessible and I kind of liked, probably based on my history, was Creativity Inc., which is the story of the Pixar founding story of Pixar. And that was pretty cool because it's actually written by one of the founders, and it doesn't go into it doesn't have the typical let's just say myth story of the founding hero who comes and slays the dragon and saves the world, which is kind of how a lot of these books are being written. Side note, and I'm gonna go back to the book, but people are so infected by a certain narrative that they will reproduce the narrative even if it doesn't have sense in the current climate. So, for example, our first Romanian, the first articles in the Romanian press said that we are gonna take on Facebook by working in a garage, and that was printed so many times that I lost count of it, and that was us competing with Facebook was stupid, but let's just say they needed a headline. But this idea of the garage, I mean, like, it was like, I don't have a car. I mean, I don't have a car to have a garage that I could work from, and the garages that people talking books have, we have different garages in Romania, let's say. Or if you go on the street, you'll notice that there aren't many of them anyway. So that sort of bullshit is like the type of thing that I'm worrying when I read like someone else relating a startup story. But the Pixar was very interesting because he goes into some of their dark days, speak about some of their struggles, and also focuses a lot on culture. And I think this is again something that I didn't pay a lot of attention to when I was working at my companies, and now I think it's extremely important. And yeah, that book was in a way eye-opening for me to pay attention to culture, what it means. And since then I read a bunch of deeper books on the topic and read a bunch of amazing articles. But yeah, that was the effect on the book on me, and I think it's important because it speaks on the value of the team, and we tend to put so much emphasis on the founder or the CEO or the guy who's in charge. And don't get me wrong, I mean, leadership is important, and I'm not here to discount that. But how that manifests inside a company and the value system that the company operates on, that is probably way more important. But it's so abstract. It's so easy to put your finger on. But that's kind of what makes or breaks a company, and that kind of what differentiates companies nowadays. I mean, like, Amazon is so different than Apple because of their culture, which of course started with Bezos, but it's not that Bezos is this, I don't know, amazing angel, and that's completely different than the Steve Jobs angels and stuff like that. It's just they have different cultures, and it's very nice to trace that and the implication of their culture through their products and their market decision and everything that they're doing. So, yeah.
Cool. And my final question is, I know you like to cook. Mm-hmm. So what's your favorite food to cook and eat? It could be different, it could be the same, I don't know.
Yeah, nowadays I'm way more sophisticated because I have a 1-year-old daughter, so I don't have that much time to go into cooking. But I have a lot of, I don't know, recipes that I do. I don't have a favorite one, let's say. I have like phases that I go through. So there was a time when I was cooking a lot of like Mexican or Indian food, and then I had a phase where I cooked a lot of pizza or did my own pasta. It was very, I don't know, cool thing to do, to cook your own pasta, and I was so over the moon that I could do it. And then we visited Thailand, and we got in love with the Thai food, and me and my wife started to experience some of the Thai cuisine. Nowadays, I don't know what, maybe commodity, I don't know, but I cook a lot of like American food, so I cook like burgers and ribs, and I know how to make like perfect potatoes and stuff like that. I'll probably get out of a phase, and hopefully I'll get into a salad phase. But for now, I'm rocking the burgers and the ribs and all those healthy things.
Awesome. Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you very much for coming. And
Thank you for having me.
Amazing discussion. Guys,